My name is Burrows Maxwell, and tonight, I speak to you not as a stranger on a screen, but as a witness, as one who has carried heavy visions in the midnight hours, visions that cling like smoke to the edges of memory. Welcome back to Near-Death Diaries. There are stories that are headlines, and there are stories that feel like prophecy. Tonight is not just another news story. Tonight, we enter the valley of a nation's grief, the echo of a shot that pierced not only a man's body, but the fragile soul of America itself. The tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk, a voice silenced under the open sky of Utah Valley University. Some call it murder. Others call it martyrdom. And already, the air is thick with politicization, with spin, with a hunger to turn blood into slogans. But I tell you this, truth is never found in the shouting. It hides in the quiet, in the trembling pause between breaths, in the prayer whispered when no one else is listening. Stay with me, because by the time this night is over, you will see angles you have not considered. You will feel the weight of questions you cannot ignore. And perhaps, just perhaps, you will hear what I heard when the voice of Jesus himself whispered, "The countdown is over." Before we go deeper, let me ask you, do not just watch this. Walk with me. Enter into this testimony with your whole heart. And if you believe that truth deserves a place in this world of noise, then click like, press subscribe, and ring the bell, because what we are about to uncover, you will not want to miss. Now let us begin. September 10th, 2025. I remember the date not as ink on a calendar, but as a wound carved into the marrow of a nation. The sun had fallen gently across the green lawns of Utah Valley University, where nearly 3,000 souls gathered beneath a white tent. They did not know that the air they breathed was already heavy with destiny. Charlie Kirk stood at the front, sharp suit, microphone in hand, his words weaving conviction, defiance, and faith. He was in the middle of an answer, the kind of answer he lived for, a question about violence in America, about mass shootings, about whether we have lost our way. And as he spoke, clear, deliberate, fate itself loaded a rifle on the rooftop of the Losi Center, some 200 yards away. A high-powered weapon, cold steel, black powder, silent intent. The shooter lay prone. I pressed a glass of a scope, heart beating like a war drum. Then, in a breath that lasted less than a second, the trigger broke and history bent. The bullet sliced through the Utah air, a silent messenger carrying the weight of hate, or madness, or both. It traveled across that distance like prophecy made visible. And then it struck. Neck, flesh, blood. The voice of Charlie Kirk, mid-sentence, suddenly swallowed in crimson silence. The crowd gasped, froze, then shattered into chaos. Screams tore the tent like lightning ripping through canvas. Some dropped to the ground, hands over heads. Others ran, clutching their children, stumbling in panic. Witnesses would later say it felt like the end of the world had arrived inside a university quad. And in that first terrible moment, you could hear the fragile sound of truth dying, not only in one man's body, but in the trembling hearts of thousands who wondered, how could this happen here now? Law enforcement swarmed like hornets disturbed from a nest. Sirens, radios crackling, a perimeter drawn too late. They stormed stairwells, searched rooftops, found footprints and palm prints smeared into tar and gravel, like ghostly signatures left by the assassin. A rifle abandoned, casings with cruel little inscriptions, mocking, profane, as if the killer wanted to laugh at the world while it bled. And Charlie Kirk. His body was rushed from the stage, neck wound gaping, life draining faster than time itself could hold. He was taken to the hospital, but he never returned. I ask you, as you listen now, what was your first thought when you heard that Charlie Kirk had been shot? Did you feel anger? Did you feel fear? Or did you feel, as I did, that some terrible countdown we had all ignored had finally struck zero? Comment below. Share your first thought. Because it matters. Not just to me, not just to this channel, but to the story of who we are as a people trying to survive the storm of our own making. Remember this. A bullet is never just a bullet. It is always a message. And on September 10th, a message was delivered to America. But what did it mean? And who among us is willing to read it? Let us walk deeper. For the wound is still open, and the truth has only begun to speak. I remember that day, September 10th, 2025. A date now carved into the marrow of American history. A Tuesday evening in Orem, Utah. The air was sharp with anticipation, and the halls of Utah Valley University pulsed with voices. 3,000 souls gathered, restless, eager, leaning forward into the words of a man whose voice had become both a bomb and a battle cry in our divided nation. Charlie Kirk. He stood beneath the fluorescent glow of stage lights, a man small in stature when compared to the immensity of the crowd, yet burning with conviction that seemed to stretch beyond his frame. People laughed, clapped, some argued, but they were listening. They always listened. And then the sound came, a crack, a thunder that did not belong inside a hall of learning. It was sharp, high, distant, its origin hidden, its message unmistakable. The shot had been fired from a rooftop, 200 yards away, by hands that carried not just a rifle, but the weight of rage, of calculation, of something darker. The moment shattered. Time split in two. Before the shot and after, I can still hear the scream of the young woman in the front row, piercing, breaking, echoing into every chest. The rush of feet on polished floors. The overturning of chairs. The splitting panic of 3,000 human hearts realizing, all at once, that mortality had stepped into the room with them. Charlie fell, his body, once upright, commanding, buckled under the force of metal and fire. His words, still half-formed, caught in the windpipe, dissolved into silence. And in that silence, chaos was born. People shouted, "Get down! Get down!" Strangers threw themselves over children. Some rushed the doors, pounding, tripping, shoving. Others froze in their seats, their bodies unable to obey the commands of instinct. Fear as a way of binding the flesh like chains. Outside, sirens began to howl. Police cars screamed into the night, red and blue strobes cutting across the Utah hills. Officers with rifles stormed the stairwells. Radios cracked with frantic codes. The world was suddenly divided between hunter and hunted, and no one knew which was which. Eyewitnesses speak of seeing the muzzle flash atop the concrete rooftop. One man swore he saw the silhouette, long coat, angular posture, a shadow against the fading sky. Others swore it was a ghost, a phantom, something inhuman perched like a vulture over the crowd. But the bullet was real. The wound was real. The collapse was real. I ask you now, as you sit here with me, listening, what was your first thought when you heard that Charlie Kirk had been shot? Was it disbelief? Was it anger? Was it fear? Or was it that strange, holy stillness that comes when the veil between life and death is suddenly torn open? Tell me in the comments below. Whisper your truth into this gathering, because your voice, too, is part of this unfolding story. Law enforcement rushed, shields raised, voices barking orders. They dragged the wounded into the light, formed barricades of human flesh around the fallen. Medical teams pressed their hands against the bleeding. Cameras rolled, and the nation gasped as images spilled across screens. Screens in living rooms, in diners, in offices where people stared, mouths open, coffee cups frozen midair. It happened so quickly, but its weight stretched time into eternity. One shot, one man, 3,000 witnesses. And yet the ripple spread across 300 million lives. Because when a man like Charlie Kirk bleeds in public, the nation does not just see a body wounded. It sees itself. This was not just a bullet. This was not just an act of violence. This was a message carved into the night sky, meant for every eye and every heart. And yet, as I stood in prayer, I heard another voice. Not the crack of the rifle, not the panic of the crowd, but something quieter, more eternal. The voice that whispered, "Do not mistake the chaos for the end, for the countdown has only just begun." And so, my friend, we step now into the deeper layers of this story. Who is this man, this Charlie Kirk, whose name has now been etched into both reverence and controversy? To understand the way of the bullet that struck him, we must first trace the life that made him both beloved and despised. Charlie Kirk was not born into the halls of power. No, he was a boy from Illinois, raised in a home like many of ours, ordinary in its rhythms, yet stirred by the currents of a restless heart. He was 17 when he first began to sense that America was slipping from the foundations he believed were sacred. While other boys his age dreamed of scholarships or sweethearts, Charlie dreamed of a movement. And so, in 2012, at an age when most young men are still finding their voices, Charlie founded Turning Point USA. It was small at first, a spark, a gathering of students around a folding table. But fire spreads when the wind is right, and Charlie was a wind caller. His mission was clear: to ignite conservatism in the youth, to reclaim a generation he believed had been seduced by shadows. Turning Point grew. It spread across campuses like wildfire, setting up banners, holding rallies, speaking of free markets, free speech, and a faith-rooted America. Charlie did not whisper. He thundered. He framed battles not merely as political skirmishes, but as moral reckonings, as holy wars between truth and deception. And in that framing, he became something more than a political activist. He became a preacher in the temple of culture wars. His pulpit was not a church, but a stage. His scriptures were not parchment, but speeches, live streams, podcasts, debates. And the youth, hungry for direction, thirsty for absolutes, drank deeply. But as light draws moths, so too does it draw predators. For every young heart Charlie awakened, there was another who rose in anger against him. To some, he was a hero, a modern-day Paul Revere, sounding the alarm across a distracted land. To others, he was a villain, a manipulator of fear, a divider of the people, a dangerous flame too close to the powder keg of America's wounds. Here lies the paradox of influence. The higher a man climbs, the more visible he becomes, and the more vulnerable he is to both worship and wrath. Charlie was not neutral. He did not live in the gray. He declared his lines in black and white, heaven and hell, right and wrong. And that made him a lightning rod in an age where lightning strikes with little warning. I confess to you now, there were times I wondered if he felt it, if in the quiet of night, when cameras were off and speeches were silenced, Charlie sensed a danger closing in. Did he lie awake, whispering prayers into the darkness, knowing the path he had chosen would make him a target? Or did conviction numb the fear, as it often does with those who believe their mission is divine? These are the questions I hold in my chest, like stones I cannot lay down. And now I ask you, my companions in this unfolding testimony, do you think being polarizing makes someone more vulnerable? Yes or no? Answer me in the comments, for your reflection is part of this chorus. Because here's the truth. Every prophet, every reformer, every man who dares to stand in the arena of ideas will one day face the arrows of his enemies. Some arrows are words. Some arrows are rumors. And sometimes, as we saw on September 10th, they are made of lead and steel. Charlie lived on the edge of that danger. He wielded influence like a torch in the night. But torches not only illuminate, they invite attack. And so his life, his work, his every word became a battleground. He was both shepherd and soldier, both teacher and target. This, my friend, is the price of standing at the crossroads of history. You either become a bridge or you become a lightning rod. Charlie Kirk became both. And so, the bullet that struck him did not merely pierce flesh. It pierced the story of who he was. It was aimed not just at a man, but at a movement, at an idea, at the very soul of a nation struggling with its identity. But there is more. There is always more. Because after the blood, after the chaos, comes a war of words, the politicization, the narratives, the battle to claim meaning from tragedy. Stay with me, beloved listener, for what followed the shot may wound us even deeper than the shot itself. And after the shot, after the sirens, after the trembling silence, came the voices. Ah, the voices. They rose like a storm across the land. And in their rising, the wound that was still bleeding had no time to close. It was pulled open wider, stretched by the hands of those who sought not healing, but power. Conservative media moved first. With trembling urgency and righteous fire, they called it what they believed it to be, an assassination attempt. Their anchors' voices shook with anger. Their headlines screamed with red letters. To them, Charlie Kirk was no longer merely a man. He was a martyr, a soldier of God struck down by the enemies of truth. They pointed their fingers swiftly, decisively. The left had created this climate, the rhetoric of progressives, the venom of activists. the silence of critics. All of it, they said, had paved the rooftop where the shooter laid his weapon. And in living rooms across America, tears fell. Mothers clutched their children closer. Fathers cursed under their breath. The image of Charlie bleeding on stage became not just an image, but a banner, proof, they said, that their movement was under siege. But the other side, the liberal voices, they too took to the airwaves. Their tone was different, measured, clinical, restrained, though no less powerful. They urged caution, warning against a rush to politicize. We do not yet know all the facts, they repeated, like a refrain. They avoided the word assassination. They spoke instead of an attack, an incident, a tragedy. To them, the danger was not only in the bullet, it was in the narrative that would follow. For the story hardened too quickly, it would ignite a firestorm that might consume what little peace still lingered in the nation. But here is the secret. Language is never neutral. The words chosen became weapons of their own. Attack sounded almost accidental. Assassination carried the weight of deliberate evil. And so, America found itself not only debating what happened, but what to call what happened. And then came the tidal wave, social media. Oh, my friend, if you had scrolled through those feeds in the hours after the shot, you would have seen the soul of the nation unravel before your eyes. Memes appear within minutes. Some mocking, some mourning. Hashtags burn like wildfire. Hashtag pray for Charlie. Hashtag justice for Kirk. Hashtag false flag. Hashtag martyrmade. Outrage poured like floodwaters. Conspiracies bloomed, some claiming the shooter was a government plant, others claiming it was staged, still others weaving elaborate tales that twisted reality into grotesque shapes. And behind each post was a human heart, some sincere, some sarcastic, some consumed by rage, others by grief, but all of it noise. So much noise, so loud that the still, small voice of truth could barely be heard. I tell you this with trembling honesty. I felt sorrow as I watched. Sorrow not only for the man struck by a bullet, but for the nation struck by confusion. For a bullet wounds the flesh, but lies wound the soul. And in those hours, America bled from both. Let me ask you, as one who walks this sacred unfolding with me, is the media coverage calming tensions or inflaming them? Tell me below. Whisper your truth into the comments, because your answer reveals not just what you see, but what you believe about the soul of this country. Do you see what is happening? Do you see how tragedy becomes currency, how blood becomes ink, how the sacred silence of grief is broken by the clamor of agendas? This is the danger of our age, that no event, no matter how raw, remains untouched by politics. Charlie Kirk's shooting was no longer about Charlie Kirk alone. It became about us, about who we are, about what we allow truth to mean. And so, while Charlie's body lay in the care of doctors, America itself was lying on an operating table of its own, cut open, exposed, and bleeding under the knives of words. But my friend, the storm of words was only the beginning. Beyond the headlines, beyond the memes, beyond the arguments, there is something deeper. A war not of bullets, but of spirits. And it is in that war that the true meaning of this moment will be revealed. Stay with me. Walk further with me. For this story is not finished. And now, beloved listener, we step beyond the noise of headlines, beyond the storm of opinion, into the colder, quieter world of evidence. For every act of violence leaves behind its fingerprints, its whispers, its trail of truth. On that rooftop, where the shot was fired, investigators found more than a vantage point. They found the bones of the act itself. A high-powered rifle, its barrel still warm, its scope marked by the trembling sweat of its wielder. Spent casings lay scattered across the concrete. Small brass testimonies of the violence unleashed. But there was more. Boot prints in the gravel, pressed deep, pacing back and forth. The rhythm of a man waiting, hesitating, perhaps praying his dark prayer before pulling the trigger. The rooftop itself became a silent witness, holding the weight of footsteps and the echoes of intent. And soon, a name emerged. A face. A life dragged from the shadows into the center of America's gaze. Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, arrested hours later, not far from the scene. His hands bound, his face pale, his eyes Those eyes, vacant yet burning with something none could fully name. Who was Tyler? Not a politician, not a soldier, just a boy, scarcely a man, caught between the ordinary and the monstrous. And yet, within his belongings, investigators found something chilling. Discord chats, threads of conversation with faceless strangers, where rage was nurtured, where fantasies of violence were spun like spiderwebs. Worse still, there were inscriptions. Strange, carved messages etched into the very bullets he carried. Words scratched into metal, as if he believed the ammunition itself could carry his creed into flesh. Some said they were Bible verses, twisted and broken out of context. Others said they were symbols, cryptic, angry, almost ritualistic. Each bullet, then, was not just a weapon, but a sermon of despair. The question that hangs heavy is this: was Tyler a lone actor? Or was he merely the visible hand of a hidden network? His digital footprints hinted at groups, channels where bitterness fermented, where disillusioned young men fed each other poison until someone finally swallowed enough to act. And yet, investigators tread carefully, for networks leave trails, and trails lead not only to individuals but to ideologies, to movements that thrive in the shadows. I must confess something to you. As one who has seen the face of darkness before, a lone gunman is never truly alone. Even if his finger pulls the trigger, countless whispers may have guided it there. Whispers of media, whispers of hatred, whispers of demons that were the disguise of community online. So here we stand with questions that burn like unhealed wounds. Was this young man radicalized or broken? Was he sent, or did he volunteer to become a vessel of violence? Was it political, personal, or was it something darker, spiritual, a storm that raged inside him until it demanded fire? And now, I turn the question to you. Imagine you were the one standing over those casings, over that rifle, staring into the abyss of motive. If you were investigating, what is the number one question you want answered? Tell me in the comments below. For perhaps the questions we ask reveal more about us than the answers ever could. Evidence speaks, but it does not always speak clearly. It tells us what happened, but rarely why. The casings tell us the bullet flew. The rifle tells us how. The inscriptions tell us he meant it to matter. But the why is the abyss. And in that abyss, America peers at itself. We see not only Tyler Robinson, but the reflection of all our sons, all our daughters, all our youth who wander through digital wildernesses, hungry for meaning, vulnerable to voices that twist their hunger into hate. Yes, the rooftop speaks. Yes, the evidence whispers. But beneath it all, there's another voice, quieter, deeper, eternal. And it asks us, not just who fired the shot, but who set the stage, who built the furnace of rage where such fire could be born. Do not look away, my friend, for what lies ahead is not only about a gunman, but about the battlefield we all now stand upon. The battleground of ideology, of faith, of the unseen war that rages even now. Stay with me, for the next step is the heaviest yet. Do you feel it? The air shifting, heavy with the sound of a nation breaking its own heart. I tell you now, not as a historian of moments, but as a witness to something deeper, a wound that has been festering quietly, beneath our arguments and our elections, beneath our parades and our protests. A wound we did not heal when we had the chance. Political violence, it does not begin with a trigger pulled. It begins with words, whispered words, shouted words, words meant not to persuade, but to pierce, to carve one neighbor away from another, to strip an opponent of humanity until they are nothing more than a shadow, an enemy, a symbol to be destroyed. I remember when disagreement was not a death sentence. I remember when free speech was not a battlefield. But lately, don't you sense it? The soil itself feels poisoned by contempt. And here is the whisper of truth I must give you. When we demonize, we invite demons. When we strip away compassion, we make violence feel righteous. And when we tell ourselves that my side must win at all costs, we are already handing the future a knife. Look around. The rise of attacks, the broken glass, the fear in the voices of leaders who once spoke boldly. Do you not see the pattern? America is not simply arguing anymore. America is bleeding. And faith is not innocent here. The language of heaven has been borrowed, bent, sharpened like a blade. Men and women invoke God not to heal but to divide. They take scripture and weld it into weapons. They cry out for morality, but the morality they preach is wrapped in flames. Do you feel the danger in that? Do you feel how sacred words can become gasoline poured over dry fields? We stand, you and I, at a crossroads where democracy trembles. The ballot and the bullet are wrestling in the dark. The microphone and the rifle echo one another. And somewhere, trust, the very lifeblood of a republic, slips quietly out the back door. And I ask you this, gently, with the weight of prophecy in my chest. Are we reaching a place where disagreement no longer ends in compromise or coexistence, but in conquest? Must every opponent be crushed, erased, silenced? Are we coming to believe that unless we destroy, we cannot survive? Pause here with me. Let your breath slow. Feel the ache of this truth. Because the bigger picture is not just politics. It is the soul of a people, deciding whether it will continue to breathe together or tear itself apart. And I confess to you, the more I see, the more I pray. I pray for leaders who will lay down the language of war. I pray for neighbors who will look into each other's eyes and remember their shared dust, their shared hope. And I pray for you that you will not grow numb, that you will not mistake anger for justice, that you will not surrender your heart to the easy, poisonous lie that violence is ever holy. This is where we are. And only truth, only love, only courage, quiet and unwavering, can save us from the precipice we now face. And now, beloved listener, we must turn our faces forward. The past has already written its sorrow into the earth, carved its warnings into bullet casings and rooftop shadows. But the question remains, what will we do with the memory? What will we carry into tomorrow? I tell you this, the path ahead must be transparent, for only in light can trust breathe again. Investigations must not be cloaked, not hidden, not twisted into theater for one side or the other. They must be clear as glass, pure as water, laid bare so that no whispered deception can take root in the soil of suspicion. Truth itself must be allowed to stand unashamed, even if it is jagged, even if it is difficult. For when truth is obscured, lies bloom like weeds. And the storytellers, the media, the chroniclers of our time, they too bear a holy burden. Not to turn tragedy into spectacle, not to stretch pain into profit, not to sharpen divisions for the sake of ratings. Their calling must be to tell with dignity, to report with reverence, to hold the weight of events as one might carry a fragile candle through a storm. For if words can wound, words can also heal. And yes, practical steps must be taken. Security, reshaped with wisdom, rooftops watched, entrances safeguarded, eyes open where once they were blind, not with paranoia, but with prudence, not because we wish to live in fear, but because we wish to live at all. But hear me, friend, this is not only the task of governments or guards. This is the sacred labor of citizens. You and I, we hold the line against falsehoods. It is our duty to fact-check, to question, to resist the sweet poison of conspiracy. For rumors are embers, and when fanned, they become fires that consume trust, consume peace, consume us. And so I ask you, will you be a keeper of truth? Will you be one who refuses to pass along the easy lie? Will you resist the temptation of outrage that feeds only chaos? And deeper still, there is the spiritual call, a whisper older than politics, older than nations. It tells us, forgive, not to excuse, not to erase, but to free ourselves from chains of bitterness. It tells us, honor dignity, even in the face of enmity. It tells us, seek justice, but never revenge. For justice is a lamp that illuminates the road forward. Revenge is a torch that burns the road to ash. This moment, painful as it is, can yet become an altar where we lay down the weapons of tongue and hand, and pick up instead the tools of rebuilding. Patience, empathy, courage, truth. And so, I leave you with this question, not as an echo of politics, but as a summons to your own soul. What is the strongest action we can take, you and I, to prevent the next act of political violence? Is it vigilance? Is it truth? Is it love that refuses to let hatred have the final word? I believe it is all of these woven together like threads into a single unbreakable cord. And if you and I choose to walk in this, then perhaps, the story of this nation does not end in gunfire, but in a rebirth of trust, of dignity, of peace. And still, my friend, the storm does not end with a gunshot. When the echo fades, when the crowd disperses, when the crime scene tape flutters in the wind like a torn banner, something else rises. Speculation, whispers, the fog of half-truths and shadows. Already, conspiracy theories bloom like mushrooms after rain. Some claim the shooter was only a pawn, that greater forces pulled the string. Others insist it was staged, a theater of blood to advance hidden agendas. Still others weave ancient fears into new fabric. Deep states, secret societies, shadow wars. And in the middle of it all stands a young man with a name, Tyler Robinson, his story suddenly bound to history's flame. Was he broken by the quiet cruelty of mental illness? Was he seduced by the venom of radicalization? Was his rage personal, a grievance carried too long in silence? Or was he a vessel for darker tides, political or otherwise, whose full depth we may never plumb? These are the questions that circle like vultures above the scene. And each question leads not to clarity, but to more uncertainty. Yet, let us not miss the other fallout, the tremors that ripple outward into the political landscape. Elections now take on the taste of gunpowder. Candidates lace their speeches with the memory of blood. Laws are debated in the language of fear and vengeance. Policy shifts are whispered. More security, tighter laws, harsher rhetoric. Each side tries to claim the wound for its own narrative, forgetting that the wound bleeds on all of us. But the world is watching. Oh, yes, the world is watching. From Europe to Asia to Africa, headlines frame America not as a beacon of stability, but as a nation trembling on the edge of its own contradictions. Allies ask, can this land still be trusted to lead? Rivals smirk, whispering that democracy itself may be fracturing under the weight of its divisions. And I confess to you, my listener, there is sorrow in this global gaze. For the land that once sang of liberty is now known for its funerals. The land that once lifted hope is now burdened by fear. But perhaps this exposure, this global witness, is also a mirror forcing us to ask, who are we becoming? What story are we telling the world about the marriage of politics and violence? So I ask you now, not as an outsider looking in, but as one heart speaking to another, do you believe violence and politics can ever truly be separated? Or are we too far entwined, too steeped in this dangerous dance where power seeks blood as proof of loyalty? Let your answer not be quick. Let it come as prayer, as reflection, as a vow. For how we answer will shape not only our laws and our elections, but our very soul as a nation. And now, beloved listener, we have walked the valley together. We have traced the echoes of that September night. The rifle on the rooftop, the shot across 200 yards, the panic of 3,000 voices breaking like glass in the air. We have remembered who Charlie Kirk was. Young, fierce, unyielding, a man who built a movement of students with the fire of his convictions. We have weighed the cost of being a lightning rod in an age when anger is currency, when words can wound as much as bullets, when politics and faith dance dangerously close to violence. We have spoken of the politicization, the right calling it martyrdom, the left calling for restraint, the media weaving language that inflames as much as it informs. We have looked at the investigation, the rifle, the footprints, the strange inscriptions carved into bullets, the suspect caught in the web of his own shadows. We have lifted our eyes to the bigger picture, the rise of political violence in this nation, the way demonization makes us believe we are justified in silencing our neighbor. We have whispered about the media, about responsibility, about the fragile bond of trust between people and institutions. We have mourned the conspiracy theories, the speculation, the global gaze that sees America trembling. And now we stand here, in the hush after the telling. My friend, if there is one truth I can leave with you, it is this: violence cannot heal what divides us. It cannot build bridges across the chasm of our disagreements. It cannot sanctify truth, nor can it secure justice. Violence is a false prophet, promising clarity but delivering only ruin. If you remember Charlie Kirk, remember not just his words or his politics, but the lesson his wound leaves us, that the price of forgetting our shared humanity is always blood. If you remember Tyler Robinson, remember not just his crime, but the warning that lost souls can be radicalized, can be weaponized, if we as a people abandon compassion and vigilance. We are called not to silence each other, but to listen, not to demonize each other, but to understand, not to strike, but to forgive, not to distort truth, but to honor it, not to give up on peace, but to guard it fiercely, like the flame of a candle in a storm. So, let this be our vow. We will reject violence. We will resist the easy seduction of outrage. We will pursue truth and empathy, even when it costs us comfort, even when it means slowing down to hear the heart of another. And as you go from this moment, I ask you, carry this vow with you. Carry it into your conversations, into your prayers, into your choices. For the future of our nation, the future of our families, the future of our very souls may depend on it. This has been Near Death Diaries. If this journey touched you, if it made you pause and reflect, do not leave it here. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss the next unfolding of truth we must walk together. There are more stories here. Stories of light breaking through darkness. Stories of lessons carried through pain. Walk with me into those, for each one is a mirror, a confession, a candle in the night. And until then, may peace find you, may truth guide you, and may justice prevail where shadows have tried to reign. This is Burrows Maxwell, and I thank you for listening. I will see you on the other side of the silence.